I am Mary Wisniewski. I'm the editor-at-large with Cornerstone Advisors, and I'm a longtime FinTech reporter. I used to cover FinTech for American Banker and then Bankrate, and I do a lot of panels. I have a newsletter called FinTeching with Mary, and my special focus over the years has been financial health. So, I started off as a traditional journalist, and that meant like sitting in the cubicle, just serial calling people until they do an interview with me, and then kind of hearing the seasoned reporters get a little bit, let's say, annoyed of like my laughter or whatever. But that's what started me off on a traditional journalism path. But I have taken it in a different direction. Now I do a lot of panels. I write a newsletter. I help do research for different FinTech companies at different times. And I find it's more the same than not. It just depends. It always depends on what's the audience. And so my audience has been my whole professional career seasoned bankers and credit unions and FinTech entrepreneurs. So it's just the style of voice changes, but it's still like I am writing or I am creating content for a specific type of a person who needs to know XYZ. So for me, it's curiosity. Curiosity is what translates the best, I think, from working in journalism to then working with FinTech companies in different ways, because it makes you always find where the story might be going. And also thought leadership. Thought leadership has become such a trendy thing. And so to me, thought leadership for like a FinTech firm, a research company, a consultancy is basically journalism if you're doing it right. You're being neutral or you're saying something interesting. And FinTech companies want that kind of content now too. Okay, so this is always a balancing act, even in like a newsroom. So it's like, think of it like first day story versus second day story. First day story, you want all your facts right, but you don't have to like jazz up the language unless you're like really talented. Then you want to do that. You want to be quick and you want to be accurate, but you don't have to be like, oh, I just made this beautiful piece of writing. But second day, I always want a second day. And by second day, I mean it could be second day story up to 30 days. So that's where you get to really tinker. That's where you get to be like, oh, these are all the themes I want in it, or these are these anecdotes I want in it. And maybe you like even put it on like note cards and then you rearrange it, because honestly, there is a lot of fast content out there, but like if you're able, and I totally encourage you to always linger on content when you can, you're going to create something that's different from other content, and it's going to make you pop, and it's going to be more meaningful. Okay, so I don't think FinTech brands usually do a good enough job with emotionally connecting with their target audience. Although sometimes you're starting to see it on TikTok now with like 3-day Fridays or things to make personal finance a little bit more fun. But there's a long ways to go. Okay, so I'm starting to see some really thoughtful posts on LinkedIn, and I know there's some ghostwriters going on, but honestly, there are some people who just are writing really cool thought pieces on LinkedIn, and some of them are FinTech founders. And one that caught my eye most recently was written by Ethan Block, who founded Digit, and he did a little wonderful backstory about like his experience with like trying to get data from Chase, and that's the hot debate right now because Chase is saying it's going to charge data aggregators money. So it was a thoughtful take on something that's a hot issue right now. So that is an example of something that others should emulate in any way that they can. Okay, so if you're a FinTech company and you're trying to reach a consumer audience, let's say you gotta like narrow it down a bit more. Like if you're going for younger people, of course you should be on TikTok and you should be very playful, and you can make personal finance content playful. So do the dance, do whatever you want to do, but you're trying to reach a specific audience and you should go where they go. But if you're trying to reach like a regulator, you need to write a spicy op-ed, and maybe you'd publish it on something like American Banker because regulators are reading that brand. Okay, so here's the thing. You always have to, if someone is paying you to do something, that needs to be disclosed. Like if a vendor is paying you to post something, you need to hashtag sponsored, whatever. And one thing that I see as a huge problem that's only getting worse is that, there's a lot of FinTech insiders who know so much, and they do like interesting posts, but they are not trained journalists, so they are not fact-checking the way that they ought to be fact-checking. So one dangerous thing that's happening is people are fancying themselves journalists and writing kind of like they are, but the piece is missing really important elements of like, this is how you source a story. Multiple sources, not just one. Okay, so this one's dicey, and there's no one answer, but you got to be tough. So basically, people are always going to try to manipulate you. You just need to have your rules. So I have different rules based on where I work, because your employer will also influence the rules. But one thing that might happen is someone will ask to review the quote before a story runs. And that can be an innocent thing because people do get misquoted, but it's also not an innocent thing because it's sometimes they just want to re-say something in a different way, or they're worried like, oh, they said something too much, but then they're tainting the story. So you need to have, like, for me, my policy is no quote review, or maybe direct quote review only. And also it's really obnoxious when a company asks you like, who else are you quoting? Surprise, you'll find out when you read the story. Okay, so for traditional journalism, I think it sort of depends where it's falling short. Sometimes they're falling short if it's someone covering a very specific story in FinTech and they just don't have the context or like know who would be a really great source. Sometimes you can be a generalist and be an awesome journalist and still find the best story ever, but you don't know what you don't know, and if your editor isn't helping you, there'll be gaps in that story, likely. So sometimes it's just like a little bit of less inside access is what's holding back traditional journalism in covering FinTech. Okay, I'm sure we're missing tons in financial inclusion, and it depends like what circle you're in, but like if it's a circle of like, let's say, banking execs or credit union execs to varying degrees, those are like 9 to 5 types of workers. So I think with financial inclusion, what gets missed is like, oh, there's people working all these kinds of gigs, so the cash flow is erratic at best. And so that's still like a mystery for a lot of financial services types. And that's just the beginning of all the mysteries that still need to be solved. And I'm actually really thankful for Chase causing all this like commotion over charging money for data access, because it's going to open the conversation more on like financial health and financial health apps and what's still needed and what's at stake. So I'm kind of excited to see where that goes. So I absolutely believe storytelling can really make an impact, because you're bringing awareness to different people, different issues, to a wider audience. And like, if you're not storytelling, how are people going to know what's going on? So I think it absolutely can change lives when it's doing its best work. So like so many things, I think you just need to be more intentional. So, if you're someone who keeps doing the same panel, perhaps you want to be like, hey, fellow employee, perhaps you want the spotlight to showcase your thoughts and and your personality on stage. And also, I think you could just amplify voices on social media. So if, say, someone you don't think is getting enough attention, like their post, comment on their post, share it in your newsletter. It's just being really mindful of like, hey, here's this smart person and they need a bigger audience, so let me help. Okay, so I am actually really curious about where FinTech content is going. Clearly, tons of content is going on LinkedIn when you're trying to sell to a bank or a credit union. And also you're seeing way more video coming into FinTech for video content. And where is Gen AI playing in all of this? Probably too prominent a role, because I feel like a lot of people are scripting themselves out based on a bot. And you gotta be careful with that. Okay, this is going to sound like I'm evading the question, but I am not. And I think the thing that's true, and it's true of any year, is the skill that you most need to do is like a willingness to experiment with whatever's coming out, because content is content, information is information, but the medium changes. And I think it's really important to keep playing with mediums because people connect with different things at different times. So I'd say the most important skill is to keep trying new things. Okay, and a little bit about me. So I accidentally entered financial services media. I started off covering high-end jewelry for a business pub. I was straight out of college, high as a kite on happiness from securing a journalism job. And then there was a round of layoffs. And so boom, that job went. And I was encouraged to start covering financial services with editors telling me, oh, you'll probably have a longer career that way. And so I was super fish out of water. We're talking like flip-flops, sundress, just a bunch of suits during like a credit crisis, public affairs meeting. That's how I arrived in it. And it made me like, I felt really uncomfortable. I felt really, oh, this is a very different world than what I'm used to. But the longer I stayed in it, the more interesting I found it to be. And then I realized, oh, you know what? This is just an industry having an existential crisis. And that's something I can absolutely understand. And that's when I was like, oh, I do belong here. I do belong here by not belonging here. Hey, I'm Mary Wisniewski. I'm an editor-at-large with Cornerstone Advisors, and I'm inviting you to subscribe to Connect the Dots in FinTech. And if you're trying to find me, I'm easy to find. So find me on LinkedIn and sign up for my newsletter, FinTeching with Mary.